Hi guys, welcome back to Nyx Reads, where we talk about books every week. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe if you love watching bookish content like I do, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy monthly wrap-ups, so I know. This is my July reading wrap-up. I finished 8 books in total. Believe it or not, I even DNF'd a book or 2. On top of that, I found a book that I think is gonna go on my favorite books of all time list, which is very exciting. Stay until the end to find out how much money I saved by using my library card. Leave me a comment if you're using your library at the moment. And we're gonna do something what I haven't done in a while, but I've been really itching to use my TBR jar. I hope you're cozy and comfortable. We'll start talking about the books now. I'll get into my DNF for July 1st. I did not finish, that's what DNF stands for, by the way. Didn't finish Beach Read by Emily Henry. In short, this book is about 2 authors. One is January, she is a romance author. The other one is Gus, who's like a literary fiction kind of author. They were nemesis back in college, and now their paths cross again because they happen to have beach houses right next to each other. I thought that the first chapter, the beginning of the story, was very strong. I like Emily Henry's writing style, but ultimately I lost interest because I found that Gus's and especially January's story individually were much more interesting than seeing them get together, because that's eventually what'll happen. I really wasn't getting into the descriptions of how attractive January found Gus, like when she was looking at him, looking at his hair, looking at his arms, looking at his muscles. I just wasn't getting into it. I ended up DNFing this book at 41%. because I noticed that I was inherently disinterested in what's gonna happen to them as a couple. I have no regrets in putting this book down because I did read Book Lovers by Emily Henry and I absolutely loved that one. So I know that there's other works from this author that are much better suited for me. So I was okay with just not giving this book any more of my time. The next book was technically supposed to be in last month's wrap-up, but I just forgot about it because it was also a DNF. So I did not finish The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lynn. This is a folklore-inspired tale about the daughter of the moon goddess who is not supposed to exist. Her existence is a secret, but because of certain circumstances, she then has to leave the palace and go out and fend for herself. So she basically becomes a warrior and receives her training in a rival court. I picked this up because this was getting so much love. I think this is a debut novel. There was just too many things that bothered me for this being a fantasy story. One of them is that the world building was just very small. It was very two-dimensional. There are instances where I can look past that, which you'll see down the line of this video. But in this case, I also was not feeling any of the characters. I didn't feel particularly bonded to them. I didn't feel like I was very much interested in how their stories are going to unfold. I was also not into the magic system. I thought it was a bit vague. There's also a love story in here, which to me felt more like friendship. I didn't feel any heat or chemistry between the characters. So again, ultimately, it is indifference that made me put this book down. I can see how other people will like this, but it was just not something for me. Now I'm gonna go into the books that I actually did finish in the month of July. I will go from lowest rating all the way to highest rating. The first one with 3 stars is The Last Quintista by Donna, Barba, Higuera. So this is a middle grade sci-fi story. I found this book randomly on my Libby app. So this story is about Earth coming to an end. There is a comet that is going to destroy Earth. Everybody knows it. People are anticipating the end. And there are a group of scientists, a group of farmers, a group of politicians that get put on a spaceship to then travel to a new planet to populate and extend the existence of humanity somewhere else. Our main character, Petra, is the daughter of 2 scientists that are going on board as well. She's supposed to sleep hundreds of years in that ship and then wake up when they arrive at the new planet, but something goes wrong. She wakes up early and she notices that she's the only person on board who has any memories left from Earth. Does that storyline remind you guys of a book to YA favorite from like 10 years ago, Across the Universe by Beth Hervis? If you know what I'm talking about, leave me a comment. I feel like a one-off in giving this 3 stars. It was all right, but it's not very memorable. It's not gonna go down in my favorites because everybody else seems to give this 4 or 5 stars. I do think that this holds very important messages for middle grade readers when it comes to diversity, courage, even colonialism. But for my taste, even for it being a middle grade, the story was a bit too straightforward. There was a very specific good side and a bad side. There was no morally ambiguous character really in here. So there wasn't a lot to think about and to stew about while reading this book. I just couldn't get into the story in a way that it involved me emotionally. It didn't really excite me, didn't grip me. So in the end, I thought this was a good read. I would still recommend it to a sci-fi middle grade reader, but it's just not going to be a favorite for me. Next up with 3.5 stars is Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari. This is my nonfiction pick for the month and also part of my summer reading list. I listened to this on audio, and I would say that just the audio experience in itself is a 5 stars. This is so hilarious. There were so many moments where I actually laughed out loud because you get called out a lot as well as an audiobook listener. And Aziz Ansari is a comedian, so obviously his delivery was spot on. I thought this nonfiction was super fun. There was a lot of very interesting facts in here. The reason why I didn't give it 5 stars or higher than 3.5 is because ultimately I didn't necessarily learn anything new. I didn't have any big aha moments. I did appreciate the fact that he did pair up with Eric Kleinberg, who is a professor of sociology, to conduct actual research. So a lot of the interesting facts about online dating, real life dating, dating back then, dating in different countries was backed up with data. They also had things like Reddit forums where people could honestly answer some questions. They did interviews and things like that. I just couldn't quiet that voice that I had in the beginning when he was explaining how they conducted this research. Is this a big enough N? Is the sample size that you're talking about big enough? But then again, I personally don't really know anything about conducting a research project, so take that with a grain of salt. I just thought, are those enough people to base these assumptions about on? Nevertheless, I will recommend this book to anybody who's interested in dating facts or even anthropology in general. It is very entertaining. Read it or listen to it, especially listen to it for fun. On a side note, he mentioned the researcher Helen Fisher a lot, which I got so many flashbacks from when I was, I think, in high school, because I wrote a paper on biological determination in finding a partner. I read like 2 of Helen Fisher's book for that and to put together my paper, and I don't know, it just brought back a bunch of memories. All in all, I consider this nonfiction a win. Next up, I finally finished Dune by Frank Herbert, just in time for the second movie to come out. I technically started reading this last year, and for some reason it just put me kind of in a reading slump. I mean, I picked up other books in between, but it took me forever to finish. Not gonna lie, towards the end, when I was starting to feel super accomplished and the story was picking up, I had a little voice that said, maybe you should read the second book in the series, but I shut that down very fast. What can I say about Dune that hasn't been said before? The detailing of this world, the history, the languages, the religions, the wars, the political intrigue, very, very, very impressive. I wish I knew from the beginning that there is a glossary. This would have made my reading experience so much easier. Because this world is immensely detailed, it was very helpful to be able to look into the character's head and see their thought processes on what was going on in the conversation that they were having, and thinking 2-3 steps ahead, what are they gonna action next based off on what they were hearing. It was much easier to understand the political intrigue this way. The chapters written from the villain's POV were very interesting, setting aside the very problematic things that he was thinking and doing, obviously. In general, this is just very impressive. Is it more impressive than something like Lord of the Rings? Probably not, in my personal opinion, but it is undeniable how this influenced any other sci-fi and even fantasy work that came after it. So, you know, you gotta give this credit for that. Can just someone explain to me why the author chooses to use words like Lisan al-Gaib, Muad'Dib, Mudir Naya, but then names some of the characters Paul and Jessica? Next up with 4 stars is The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in a trilogy after the Inheritance games. The second book picks right up where the first one ends. The first one is about Avery, our teenage main character. This is a YA story, in case you didn't know. She, out of the blue, becomes an heir to a billionaire who passed away, and she inherits everything, to the dismay of the family he leaves behind. She has absolutely no clue why. She doesn't know this man. She moves into the estate where she meets the 3 grandsons that the billionaire Hawthorne leaves behind, and from there escape room-esque mystery ensues where she has to solve clues and riddles to figure out what exactly is happening to her. The first one I rated 3 stars. I rated this 4 stars because I actually enjoyed it way more. There's more questions that are left behind from the first book that get answered in this one. It was very easy to get back into the story. It reads fast. I still don't really care about the romance part of the book, but I liked that some of her friends get a bigger voice in this book and aren't just characters in the background. I enjoyed the character growth that Avery is experienced in this book, and overall I just had a good time with it. I have the 3rd one right here, so I'm gonna finish the series, and I think it's a very fun one, especially if you like escape rooms. Next, with 4 stars, is the controversial, at the moment, height of book talk book, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I won't dwell on this because I have an entire vlog for this book. So we have Violet, who's our main character, who was never supposed to become a dragon rider, but she's forced to sign up to be a cadet and try to become a rider. People like to call this a romantasy rather than a fantasy because romance plays a big part in this book. Does this book have plot holes the size of the Grand Canyon? Yes. There are so many things in here that do not make sense? Yes. Is at least the world building good in this one? No, hell no. And yet, I still enjoyed this so much. This is a 500-page book that I flew through within a week. It brought back my love for dragons and dragon riders that I previously experienced only during my Aragon obsession. And I mean obsession with a capital O era when I was like 13, 14. So I love the dragon content in here, and you know what? I didn't mind the romance. I already pre-ordered the 2nd book, can't wait to read it, but you honestly have to suspend so much disbelief, and not just in the sense of that this is fantasy, but you have to be able to gloss over all the bad writing stuff in here and plot holes in order to enjoy it, but once you do, it's a wild ride. It's fun. Next up, with 4.5 stars. This was so close to a 5-star, even debating if I should just go ahead and round it up to a 5, is Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I finally read this. Whenever I would show this video in a haul or in a TBR, people were so nice in the comments and were very encouraging about this book, saying that this was one of their favorites. And you guys, you all were right. This was so much fun. This is a true whodunit within a whodunit. The setup of the story is that Susan Ryland is an editor for Alan Conway, who is a murder mystery crime writer. So she receives his newest manuscript, and that is what you are reading in the beginning. So you have the very much Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery in a sleepy English village. Then you jump back to Susan's world, and there is another whodunit related to that manuscript embedded in her world. So you have 2 murderers to find, 2 mysteries to solve, and somehow they are connected. This book is just incredibly clever. It is so meta. There's so many nods to the genre of murder mystery, especially from English authors. There's actually a bunch in here that I didn't know. I know Agatha Christie, but then there were other references for other authors that now made it on my Goodreads TBR. The author is so good at mimicking different voices because you have the murder mystery in here that is written by Alan Conway. Then you have the actual book where you're reading about Susan Ryland. Then there's also letters and like other pieces of literature in here that once again have a very different voice from anything else. And I forgot that I have all of these tabs in here. Let's see, what did I tab? Okay, so this I tabbed because this quote here rings very true for Hercule Poirot, who is the detective in Agatha Christie novels. The detective had a maddening habit of keeping everything under his hat until it suited him to reveal the truth. And this is an interesting fact that is very evident, but I never really considered before. Setting the story in the 40s also allowed for a gentler pace. No mobile phones, computers, forensics, no instant information, which is true for any of the older murder mysteries I read. And it's true that that is a big part of why they do feel so cozy. I could go on and on about this. I have the 2nd book already on my way to me, and this is honestly a book for anybody who loves a true whodunit story. Next up, also with 4.5 stars, and once again, I'm debating to give it a 5, is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. The story is set in the UK. Our main character is Jen. She's a mom, a lawyer. On Halloween night, she's waiting for her son to come home. She looks out of the window and there she sees her son Todd, but he's not just walking home. She witnesses him kill a man. She's in absolute utter shock. She has no clue who that man even is or why her perfectly normal son would do such a thing. That night she goes to bed and wakes up the day before. And that keeps happening. She keeps traveling back in time. She doesn't know why. That is for her to figure out, like for any time traveler ever. This book did something that I didn't expect at all, which is that it married the sci-fi element of time traveling, the chaos of it all, to a very literary quality, which is a lot of reflection on emotions. She was reflecting a lot on her love for her son, for her husband, for her family, what it is to be a mom. What was brilliantly done is that you as the reader are just as much in the dark as Jen is. You are so confused to a point where I was like, why is this book moving like this? But then I realized, oh, I'm like in the exact same position that Jen is. I've read so many mysteries and thrillers, but I did not see the end coming, not from a mile away, and I thought it was so good. Lastly, the book that I gave a full 5 stars to, and this is not just gonna go on my favorite books for this year, but I think this is gonna go on my favorite books in general of all time list, is 15 Dogs by Alexis. I did not expect this book to be a 5 stars. This was one of the books I randomly picked up on that library sale. I'm gonna link the haul. Judging by the reviews that I saw online, I thought that I'm gonna give this 3 stars, but it blew me away. This was so good. This novel that is fairly short, it's under 200 pages, is a bet between Apollo and Hermes. One bets the other that if dogs had the consciousness of a human, they would die just as miserable as humans, whereas the other says no, they're gonna be actually happy. So for that bet, they take 15 dogs that are currently in a Toronto vet clinic and give them human consciousness and language. This throws the dogs in an existential crisis. They start to feel alienated. Where do these dogs go from there? Ultimately, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out what this is the author's holding up a mirror to humanity. What does it mean to be a human? How do we behave towards each other? What do we strive for? What do we use our language for? And all of that is reflected to these poor dogs. And I'm telling you right now, I don't have a dog. I love dogs. I don't have one, but if you have one, this book is gonna break your heart into 1,000 tiny pieces and you won't be able to pick it up. This is so gut and heart-wrenching. Trigger warning for animal cruelty. What this author managed to say and the questions he managed to put together in such a short book is just astounding to me. And what also worked so well is that my reactions to these dogs were literally the same as the humans, a very select amount of humans that encountered these dogs in this book. Granted, this book is not for everybody. I'm not going to go around recommending this to every single person because I can see how somebody might pick this up and find this way too pretentious, way too wordy, way too abstract and very philosophical. But if you enjoy asking yourself philosophical questions and sometimes taking a break and looking at what even is humanity, what are we doing here? And if you enjoyed shows like The Good Place, for example, then this is a book worth picking up. I'm never gonna look at dogs the same way ever again, especially stray dogs. My God, this is so bleak at times, and it puts also religion into a very interesting perspective. Honestly, I shouldn't be that surprised because it won a bunch of Canadian literature prizes, as you can see on the cover, but for some reason I've never come across this book ever. So if you are ready to ask yourself the big questions, but from a dog's point of view, then grab this book. It is so good, but I'm warning you, this is the exact opposite of escapism. This is pinning you down on a chair and forcing you to look yourself and humanity in the eye. All right, that was a lot of books. Time to look at my library savings and to pick a book from my TBR jar. I saved $123.76 this month by using my library card. And now for the moment I've been waiting for personally for a long time. I haven't done this in a while. I'm gonna pick one of the books in here that are waiting on my shelves unread. Okay, because I don't have enough books on my TBR that I need to read soon. Okay. Okay, this is really exciting. Is it gonna be a newer book? Is it gonna be one that I've had for years? Can you read it? Oh, it's in German. So Harry Potter und der Feuerkelch, which translates to the fourth Harry Potter. I received this on Christmas, so it's good to get this out of the way. If you've made it this far into the video, why don't you leave me a dog emoji in the comments? And don't forget to let me know what your favorite read from July was. I'm so curious to know. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it so I know what you guys like to watch on this channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.